Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today is part 2 of a 2-part show with Lyne Limoges of VNA and Hospice in Newport. Last week we talked about what hospice does during the dying process, and we used much of it through the story of my wife, Penny Wheeler, who died on July 29th after a 1.5-year battle with cancer. This segment, we will talk about grief following the loss and what VNA and hospice can do to help people with that part of the process. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Scott. Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming. Again, just for people who didn't see the first segment, you and Penny was more than a client of yours, but she was a fellow 19-something graduate of Lake Region.
Of Lake Region, correct. I went to school with Penny at Lake Region.
Right.
I don't even remember the number of people in our class, showing my age now. But we were friends in high school and friends after high school. Right. We lived in the same community. Right. So
and Penny had a way of living. Penny lived her life underneath her own terms, but she was just a very straight to the point person. She faced every challenge that came her way just with amazing tenacity. She picked herself up and really did great things with her life. But as much as Penny did within her professional world, 30 years in healthcare, she told me when I went to write her obituary, she says, "Do not focus on what I have done in the professional world, because that's nothing compared to what I've done in my." Important to me is what I've done in my personal world, as in created these 3 wonderful kids, 6 grandchildren. She says that too many obituaries focus on what really wasn't that important to a lot of people. It's, she didn't want her obituary to looking like she was applying for a job on the other side. And but so she was very practical. But so number one to her in her life was her family. And so as we talked in the first segment, when she found out she was dying of cancer, instead of making it great fanfare, announcing it, we just flew below the radar. We made no grand announcements. I shocked a lot of people when I announced her passing, because she wanted to focus on what truly was important to her in life. It was family and friends. Those were the key things. It was more important to her than telling the world about that she had cancer. Besides that, cancer's a horrible thing, and she had no desire to give cancer any more credit than it deserves. She did not want to be defined as having cancer. She wanted, that was just part of her life, and she continued to live. She continued to walk us through the dying process. She explained to us what she wanted of us when she was gone. She prepared our business. She went everywhere. This was how she was. There wasn't a topic she did not discuss with me. Is all the way from the mundane, like, no, you will not save money. You will not go and try to save money by giving my cat dry cat food when she likes wet cat food. And every time when I give her some wet, dry cat food. That kind of nags at me. Like, she's, but I still give her wet cat. To the super serious stuff is Penny and I literally grew up together, as you know. We were 18 and 19 when we got together. Her number one focus for me was that I find love again. She would have these little things that suggestions. Hey, that person might make you a pretty. But by the way, not
that one.
Not that one. And she even sat down with one of my nieces, Carissa, and they hatched this plan that when it's time for me to date again, that Carissa is taking applications, and she's gonna weed through them first.
There you go.
And then she's gonna do a background check, and so so that was part of her process of preparing me for. And I used to sit there and think, Penny, I don't want any. She said, Scott, you are incapable of living on your own.
She knows you that well.
Oh yeah, but so this was the process we went through, and she so prepared me and the kids and those around her for her passing. And now we're on to this. This week's topic is grief. What is it, and how we can work our way through it, and what you guys have to offer. So, what I warn. This isn't the first time I've been through this. I've lost a mother. I've lost a father-in-law. I've lost a brother-in-law. I've lost many older friends. But this death, though, there was no way. Nothing else compared it is to what I've experienced.
Right.
And she prepared me well, but still that doesn't mean that you're ready. So it rocked my world. But Penny, as Penny said, she says, I expect you to grieve. You should grieve, but I don't want you to become lost in your grief. And so that's exactly, because Penny died with so much grace, dignity, gratitude, and humor. I owe it to her. All of us who knew and loved Penny owe it to her to live their lives the same way. And that's how I have moved forward. Some people, we all grieve differently.
Right.
And I think I guess I'm a unique person, and I don't mean that always good, 'cause Penny will tell you I'm unique sometimes, would have told you. But when I know something is going to be tough for me to get through, I actually kick the door down and I do it to get it done. On our anniversary, which came about a month after her passing, Penny had already told me how I should approach that. She says, go out and have a beer and celebrate for us. 'Cause we would have been doing that. Well, go out to eat, have a beer. And that's exactly what I did. And it was so nice. Some people would not have been able to do that. But I went out by myself. It was down at the T-Bar.
Yep.
And Tina Bliss, my childhood friend who owns it, said, what are you doing, Scott? I said, Penny and I are celebrating our anniversary. And she knew exactly what I was doing. And that's the way I have approached things, is when I know it's going to be tough, and sometimes it's really tough, but I do it.
Some days are better than others, for sure. I mean, for us, a lot of the people that we work with have different ways of dealing with their grief. Sometimes it's the loss of a parent or a loss, of a loved one, their spouse or a child. But it is. Everyone grieves differently. For us at the agency, we follow through with people who have passed that were on hospice on our services, and we follow through with the families, and we check in. We check in with them to see how they're doing. We offer some, in literature, some information. We are always there to help family members after their loved one has passed. So if you were to call me today and say, hey, I've got a question about this, we answer those questions. We continue to work with the families and offer our support. We have a social worker, Donna Lauren, who works with us, and if they need a social worker to talk to, then Donna's available. If they need a chaplain, we have Mickey Richards who works with us, and so we kind of go with what the person needs. So if a person needs a little bit more, then we're there, and if they don't, then that's okay too. But we try to be supportive of them, knowing that there is a grieving process, and that process takes for some weeks, for some months. It depends on what they went through. Obviously, Penny prepared you very well, and you're right. There are good days and there are bad days. So you are apt to have more grief on a specific day, whereas maybe not. Whether it's a birthday or an anniversary, or the holidays are coming. The holidays can be tough for a lot of people when they now see that person as being, not sitting at the table, and that chair is empty, and that's difficult.
And I think grief is a lifetime process, but I think it's how we deal with it, because the level, of course, because I'm always going to grieve to some degree for Penny, because even if I do what Penny says and I do find somebody else, Penny is forever part of me, and Penny, I will always be a piece of me that is going to grieve for her. The other way I did things, the other thing some weird things come along the way. Like, for example, when Penny was dying, for years, Penny's always said, I want to be buried. I do not want to be burned or cremated. Mm-hmm. And 4 days before she passed, Penny, you got to remember, Penny had a great sense of humor. Mm-hmm. She says to me, Scott, I want to be cremated. I said, what? She said, I've been laying here, I've been thinking, I don't want to lay for eternity with a door in my face. And I said, you really want to be cremated? Absolutely. I said, and I welcomed her brothers into conversations that we had. The bottom line is it was, between Penny and I, the decision, but we always welcomed them. So I said, Penny, will you talk to your brothers and just tell them you've made this decision, because I didn't want them
to think it was your idea.
I think it was my idea. And she talked to them, and they all said, yeah, that's great. And this is, about the grief process is, so she ended up being cremated. And I didn't know how, I thought before I lost Penny, I actually thought it was ghoulish to have somebody's cremations there at the house. I just could not wrap my head around why somebody would want that.
Right.
And then I dreaded going over to get her. And I've got to give a shout out to Val Whipple. He just super to deal with. Val was great, the whole process. And then I went over and I picked out the beautiful urn with doves on it. And then he had to put her in that urn. And I remember looking at what was left of her, and I felt like she was home. It was the most beautiful thing. And I asked the kids, I said, do you mind if we don't bury your mother yet? We have a headstone. She designed her own headstone.
Nice. Oh, wow.
And I said, do you mind that I keep her until it's my time? She said, oh, yeah, fine. I found that process right there very comforting. I would never have guessed. And I proudly brought her home, and she has been in my home in more ways than one. I've talked to her. I've probably swore at her a couple times there, like, why did you leave me here? But it was yeah, it was a great, and then to even like, if anybody knew me in high school, I have people come up to me, what the heck happened to you? I wouldn't say boo in school. I would not do public speaking. I hosted her celebration of life. I had my friends, Fred and Carol Ann Barker, her two ministers. They joined me, and I'm the one. I did her celebration of life. It was at the on the barn at the top of the world,
Yep.
and it truly was. It was not a funeral. It was a celebration of her life. And people said, "How did you do that?" And I said, "How could I not do it?" And
You knew.
and I got to give a shout out to two members of our NEK TV team, Todd Peranto and Kelby McManus. They both took part in the celebration of life because they are two of the most talented singers this area has, and it really was. I actually found that I don't blame people for not being able to host the celebration. I don't blame people for not being able to speak at it, but it worked for me.
Right.
And I even asked Penny whether she wanted me to do it because she's known I've done quite a few celebrations. And she said, "Yeah, I'd like you to do it, but if you can't do it, that's okay."
Nice.
But
I think everybody grieves differently. So in the closure, because it's a part of the closure of when someone passes is to be able to find that closure. For you, that was, not that it was completely closed,
No.
but it gave you the opportunity to celebrate her life. Others have a different process. And I think the process is personal, and it depends on the person, and it depends on who they lost.
exactly.
So if you lose a child, it's different than if you're losing a loved one, a parent, or a spouse. It's all different. So I can respect that, and I know that her celebration was beautiful. But like you said, not everyone does that same thing. But it's all in the personal end of life and what they choose to do after someone passes.
There's a grand debate in the world, which probably shouldn't even be a debate. I think it's more of a discussion. Is it, because I don't think there's any comparison, is it better to lose somebody to a disease like cancer, or is it better to lose somebody without suffering from, say, a heart attack? I think there's
So many different ways.
so many. It's like, it's true. Like, I personally, even after losing Penny and the wonderful experience we had, I have talked to the big man upstairs, and I want to die in my sleep of a heart attack.
Yep.
But on the flip side, I did have that closure. Like, my grief process began the day after Thanksgiving 2020 when Penny was diagnosed. I celebrated her life throughout that time, but I also grieved knowing what was to come. I don't, but on the other hand, because she had cancer or, one of these type of diseases, I also, in Penny's case, I also had to watch her turn into a skeleton. Yeah. And but then if your loved one has a heart attack, you don't have that.
You're right, because you did see her. Now, someone could also give the impression that you saw her also decline, so you were losing her a little bit at a time. But her attitude towards where her life was and to live it, you were able to live alongside of that without seeing that, yes, she passed and had lost a lot of weight because of her disease process. I don't know that there's a good or a bad. I don't think there's a better or a worse. I think it's a different, and then it depends on who is left behind and what that looks like.
Right. Well, I would tell you I'm just going to be immortal, but I don't want to be immortal, because off the topic a little bit is I get to interview some really old people. The oldest being 104, and the one thing they will tell you, it's no fun to watch your family and your friends all die, and I remember one person told me, you slowly become a stranger in your own community if you don't watch out, because everybody dies around you.
That's true.
And unless you cultivate new relationships. But I do think grieving is a very personalized journey. I've even asked myself, am I grieving right? Because I still go through life in awe because of Penny. I'm still just, and I have asked myself, because Penny explained to me she wanted me to keep on living. We have a social group of friends. It's a little weird now to go out as like some people call it the fifth wheel, is because our friends are all paired up and I'm not. And you know what? They've been super to me. I've grown accustomed to it. And that's just, I just kick down the door, but not everybody can do it. And I often say to people, I think it must be tough. I think it's tougher maybe when you're not a person that is really connected like I am, and that Penny and I had a very good social life. Penny and I did everything together, but we also had a very strong
Support
circle.
A small circle.
And so what do you folks do for the whole grief?
So we actually haven't had the opportunity. A lot of it was 2020 came in, the pandemic, but we actually are getting started with a bereavement group starting in January.
Right.
For the opportunity for people to go through, especially the first year of losing a loved one, and those opportunities that come up where maybe the grief is a little stronger and you have a little bit more sadness, such as birthdays or anniversaries or holidays. So beginning in January, on the first Tuesday of each month, we're going to have a group. It's going to be hosted by our social worker, Donna Lauren, as well as our chaplain, Mickey Richards, and it's going to be at the agency on Lakemont, Orleans, Essex, VNA on Lakemont, and it's going to be from 3 to 4:30. On the first Tuesdays of each month, starting January 3rd. So we're going to start the year off and be there for the people who want to come, and it's open to the communities, to our communities we serve, and come once, come every time. Just, we want to be there for our community members, not just the people that were on hospice, but also community members who may want to meet with someone.
Yeah, because, this whole grief thing, because I actually... since I belong to a group on social media, which nobody else can see, I actually write quite a bit about the process, and that, it's like, so I have that group there, but I also write about the grief of other people. Like sometimes I remind myself, I'm not the only one grieving Penny's loss, my children, my grandchildren, but then there's other people. Penny's older brothers, the brothers that looked over her all of her life. I wrote a piece about them as being the men of steel. These, and how as loggers they have survived. They have survived wayward chainsaws and fallen limbs, but what really brought them to their knees is the loss of their sister. And I've watched them age overnight, and they were super for tough, hardcore mountain men and hunters. They were there every step of the way. So I handle my grief through work, through writing, and I don't put it out on my regular social. The reason I don't put it on regular social media is Penny said, this is one thing Penny said, the reason I very seldom ever, I only touch upon her past, and she says, Scott, listen, don't send messages to me through Facebook, because I hated Facebook in real life, and do you think I'm going to get to the other side and sit there and scroll through? But that's where I get a lot of support from a group that I belong to, and I think support is important.
It is.
in one form or another.
Exactly, and that's why we wanted to open it up for people to come in person to do that. You know, and not everyone does, but others want the socialization of getting together with other people that maybe can understand where they're coming from.
Right.
And not that everybody's the same, but have the opportunity to talk to others as well.
You know, one thing I think is really sad, and I think our society is getting better at it. I've interviewed dozens of World War II veterans when they were still alive, and sometimes they actually, the first time they actually cried about things they saw and did in war was to me. Wow. Because society did not allow men to cry. We've come a long ways, but there's still a lot of men. And to tell you the truth is, if tears had been gasoline, this country would not have a gas shortage. I'm fully able to admit that, and I think it helped me get through. Do you find that there's still men have a struggle?
I think that sometimes they do, and I know that I feel like sometimes we are very stoic Vermonters. So a lot of times, and I think that's part of the reason that that people don't get on hospice either, is because they can handle this and they choose to handle it on their own. But for us, we just want to be there to offer the services if they need us. But I agree. I think that there are some people that still have, the men that feel that they still can't cry.
Right.
But they shouldn't feel that way. And I'm glad that you're able to express your emotions the way you want to express them. And I think that by having people hear it and understand it from different, points of views, I think that helps them as well.
Yeah. I can't remember if we said it on this segment and or the following segment, but Penny was she was just so determined, as she said, that all she had to do was die. And I had to live. And I was so taken by Penny's, the way she's handled it, is I just want to keep her, I wanted to use this time also to get her message out there, because whether it be, nobody looks, not many people look forward to death, but death, that journey, that final chapter, does not have to be this dark, foreboding thing. Yeah, it's going to be in the back of your mind, but Penny was right. I now understand when she says, Scott, all I've got to do is die. You've got to live. And I didn't fully understand that. I says, no, Penny, because the bottom line, she got the short end of the stick. But I now understand this whole grief thing and the process that we survivors have to go through. It's like, I'm back 3-4 weeks ago, I'm tooling along, having a grand old time. Then out of nowhere, what the heck was that? A tsunami. It weren't just a wave of grief. It was like, boom, slammed me down. And it was tough. But you know what that's great about it? I needed it. Because once I picked myself up, brushed myself off, and got done saying, what the heck was that about? It makes you stronger.
It does.
So, no, this grief thing, and the thing is, there's no one way, as long as you're safe, there's not one way to grieve. No.
So you can't grieve the wrong way.
Yeah. As long as you're safe.
Stay safe.
Yeah. And no, there's different ways of grieving. And I just, maybe I have an insane way of doing it, is I just face it. Since Penny's passing, I have lived in an airplane, because my kids, and this is the thing, is I have traveled the country. I have visited my kids. And I also did this one unique little thing that other people do, is Linda Smith of Newport she's a seamstress, and I've taken Penny's shirts, made them into many, she and Bill made them into many teddy bears, and I've hand delivered Penny's, teddy bears made out of Penny's shirts to all my kids and grandkids.
That's awesome.
And, well, it's hard to believe that we just seem to have touched on it. So my final words about Penny is this. She taught me and many others a lot about life. But in the act of dying, she continued to teach. It was, she not only taught us how to live, but she also taught us how to die. And those are going to be, if I had gone first, I think I would have been going out weeping and wailing and gnashing my teeth every bit of the way. Because you do know women are the stronger sex. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I think when it's my time now, I'm not going to be happy. But Penny taught me well. And I hope somebody reminds me that if I get weeping and wailing too much, it's like, suck it up.
And I think she's still teaching because she's now teaching through you.
Right.
And giving people the opportunity to learn from what you've been through and
so
what you're going through.
Right. And as we wrap up, once again, when is the grief?
The first Tuesday of each month at the agency from 3 to 4:30, and it's at 46 Lakemont Road, Orleans, Essex, VNA. And it's going to be the first year first. So help people going through the first year of after the loss of a loved one.
Right.
Please join us.
My last question of you, you've done a super job at VNA and hospice. Do you love your job?
I do love my job, and I love my community.
Right.
So it's great.
Right.
It's
no,
great.
You provide more services than I actually. I view myself as pretty connected, but you offer far more services than I think a lot of people know.
We do. We do, and we love what we do.
Right. Okay, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Scott.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.